And that's where we're going now, Brands Hatch, because for the next hour exactly, the drivers are having their final practice for the race tomorrow. And all eyes, of course, will be on Nigel Mansell to see if he can claim pole position. Anyway, we go live down to Brands now, and Murray Walker.
Thank you, Des. It's excellent weather here at Brands for that vital last 60 minutes of practice for tomorrow's British Grand Prix. The 60 minutes that will decide the starting grid and who acquires and occupies that much coveted pole position. Massive crowd. In fact, I reckon there are more people here at Brands Hatch for this last day of practice than there were at the French Grand Prix last Sunday. And that gives you some indication of the enormous enthusiasm of Britain and the British for Grand Prix racing. The circuit is in absolutely superb condition. We have had the last 1.5 hours of setting up practice, and this is what they have come to see. The man of the meeting, Nigel Mansell, who has gone out good and early and is really smoking round now on what I expect to be an improvement on his third fastest time in yesterday's qualifying of 1:08.818 seconds, and that's a speed of 136 miles an hour. Let's take you round the lap. Nigel has just cleared Druids. He's going into Graham Hill Bend and takes that at about 155 miles an hour. Up the Cooper Straight, very short, which he has just completed, into Surtees Bend, and he's slowed down quite noticeably. But he's into Pilgrim's Drop now, which at normal racing speeds is, believe it or not, about 185 miles an hour. Building up speed for the approach to Hawthorne Bend, which he's just cleared. That's about 195 miles an hour. Now he goes through Westfield, the right-hander, fifth gear, into Dingle Dell at about 175 miles an hour. Round the right-hander at Dingle Dell corner, down to Stirling's Bend, third gear, about 130. Building up speed now, fourth gear, fifth gear, up into Clearways at 160 miles an hour, coming through. Now he's well outside the time. Now he's giving it the gun, and Nigel Mansell is going for it. His target is Nelson Piquet's fastest time yesterday, his teammate, 1 minute 7.69 seconds, and there's a problem for him, which is going to face people all through this qualifying session, trying to find a clear lap. Because if people are out on the circuit, building up to racing speed or slowing down from racing speed, and they get in the way, even a minor manoeuvre to round them can cost that vital hundredth of a second, which can make the difference between pole position and not being there. There's the digital readout of his time so far. 5 is Nigel Mansell's number, the famous red 5 for five times Grand Prix winner Nigel Mansell, 3 times a winner this year. I remind you that the target that he's going for is 67.69 seconds, a quite incredible speed. I'm watching the readout now, which has yet to come up. Well, there we are, 67.39. Nigel Mansell, at the present moment, is in pole position on his first set of tyres. That's what people have come to see, and they've seen it. But that is not the end of the afternoon, because there are still some 55 minutes of qualifying. But Nigel Mansell has thrown the gauntlet down, has taken pole position, but has still got 1 set of tyres to come. Look at what he's done this year. Third on the grid in Brazil, then he was taken off on the first corner by Ayrton Senna. That brilliant second place, just beaten by Senna in Spain. Then in San Marino, despite starting third on the grid, he retired. Second on the grid in Monaco, fourth in the race. And now look at the run that he's had. Fifth on the grid in Belgium, won it. Then he won in Canada, won last week in France, and he's right on top of his brilliant form. Now, this is Stefan Swedish Ferrari driver. The Ferrari is undoubtedly the fastest car on the circuit in a straight line. Believe it or not, he was going past the control box, which is 200 yards from Paddock, in fact, Paddock Ben, the falling away right-hander yesterday, at 185 miles an hour. Mansell has been out. There is his teammate, double world champion Nelson Piquet. They're taking off now the heated elements that surround the tyres before they go out to build the tread compound and the tyre carcass up to race temperature, or as near as they can to get to it. It'll still take 1 or 2 laps to get it truly to race temperature, but it reduces the time. On the right you see Frank Durney, who is Nelson Piquet's race engineer and the Williams team aerodynamicist who's responsible for the shape of their cars. The wind cheating, the slippery shape which enables the Honda engines developing in qualifying trim here this afternoon over 1,000 horsepower to optimise their effect, and Johansson has spun off and stops. As you can see, he's perfectly all right. And let's have a look and see what happened. Here is Johansson coming up to Druids, the right-hander, down into second gear. He's got it unlocked, the back slides out. He's perfectly all right. He looks to the left, looks to the right, stops the car, selects first gear, and drives away. I have not yet had a chance to establish, as Mansell now calmly looks at the monitor in front of him, which gives him a readout of everybody's time as they establish it. And he will sit there waiting until somebody beats his time, which may not happen, of course. 1 minute 7.399 is only 0.2 of a second after off Ayrton Senna's 1985 European Grand Prix pole position. So here's Piquet on his first set of tyres. What do I mean, his first set of tyres? Well, in this final qualifying session of 60 minutes, as Alan Jones, the Australian ex-world champion, in the Lola Haas with the Ford engine passes him, they are each allowed 2 sets of qualifying tyres. 8 tyres altogether. Those tyres are marked with the car's race number and are checked at the end of the pit lane before they go out. And since a set of tyres can very easily wear out in 3 laps, that's 2.61 miles each lap, and only give their best for 1 lap, you'll realise how critical getting their timing right is. Nelson Piquet still touring round by his immaculate and demanding standards, building up now to qualifying time speed, and I forecast that he will go for it at the end of this lap. And what the it is that he is going for is his teammate Nigel Mansell's pole position time of 1 minute 7.399. Nelson Piquet there has achieved more pole positions in his racing career than any other current Grand Prix driver. 19 pole positions out of the 180 Grand Prix that he has driven. Nigel just sitting there, he's not worried. This now tremendously mature, very, very experienced 31-year-old man from the Isle of Man, 82 Grand Prix behind him, 3 pole positions in his career. And meantime, Nelson Piquet is exiting Clearways Bend to start his fast lap. Over the line goes Piquet. Now he's going for it. 175 miles an hour as he builds up to speed. He passes the car there, which has not delayed it, which was Straps Tyrrell Renault, dropping down in 5th gear to Crown Hill Bend. Cooper Straight Thornhill. Look at the 40Cs coming off his rear wing. The spark striking off the titanium skid plates, perfectly safe at the bottom of his car. Round Westfield, 160 miles an hour. Dingle Dell, 175 miles an hour. Dingle Dell corner, third gear, 130. Sterling's under the bridge, down into Clearways, fifth gear, 160 miles an hour. There's a car in front of him which he will clear, and this is a very, very quick one indeed, and according to my timing, it's 1:7.04, and if that is right or near it, it's Piquet for pole. And it's 1:7.063, so now Piquet is in pole position. Nigel Mansell there has seen it, and I should tell you that whilst there is not exactly needle between Mansell and Piquet, his teammate, there is a very healthy rivalry. Nelson Piquet joined the Williams team this year after 7 years with Brabham for an alleged fee of $3.3 million. And Nigel Mansell, well paid as he is, doesn't get that. And Piquet naturally expected to be number one. Piquet has won one Grand Prix this year. That man, Nigel Mansell, has won 3 Grand Prix this year. And in the last 11 Grand Prix since Nigel Mansell won his first, the European Grand Prix here at Brands Hatch last year, Mansell has scored more points than anyone else. 56 points from Mansell, 46 points for Prost, 42 points from Ayrton Senna. And now, after 13 minutes of this 60-minute final qualifying session, the Williams cars, as you look at Keke Rosberg, the 1982 world champion in a Williams that was, is out on the grid, out on the circuit. And the order is Piquet in pole position, 1:07.063. Mansell, his teammate, is second. Gerhard Berger, the Austrian, in the Benetton BMW, with yesterday's time, is still in third position, but is now out on the circuit. Ayrton Senna is in fourth place on the grid. In fifth place is Keke Rosberg, the man you're looking at now, ahead of his teammate Alain Prost. There's Senna, the middle head. And this is what Ayrton Senna is looking at, the big screen, which is absolutely unique at Brands Hatch, which has these magnificent facilities and is a superb circuit. And that screen is showing the picture that you are looking at, and across the track from that screen is the big Brands Hatch grandstand, so the spectators here can see them all the way from the entry to Clearways to the exit at Surtees, and that's about 1.2 miles, I would guess. And then they pick them up on the big screen and follow them over the rest of the lap. A marvellous facility. Ayrton Senna, who is talking to Ferrari, who is reputedly been offered a mammoth fee to join next year. Brands Hatch is seething with rumours, the most interesting of which is that next year, there's Gerhard Berger on the right, the man who designed the car that Senna is driving, and that interesting rumour is that next year Lotus will be using Honda engines. Well, a few moments ago, we were looking at a contented and relaxed Nigel Mansell in pole position. Now we are looking at a contented and relaxed Monte Carlo resident, Nelson Piquet, who is contemplating his 20th pole position. Will Michele Alboreto, 5 times a Grand Prix winner, be able to do anything about that? And I would very confidently say no. Because although the Ferrari, with its V6 engine, is very, very fast, indeed the fastest of the lot, in a straight line, It is not so hot, comparatively speaking, around the corners. As you look at Alboreto going out, I look at Mansell, who is going out again to try and regain. There he is, the pole from Nelson Piquet. In many ways, this final 60 minutes of practice is one of the most interesting aspects of a whole three-day Grand Prix meeting. Practice on Friday, practice on Saturday, race on Sunday, and the tension in this last 60 minutes is bowstring tight. 2 sets of tyres, remember. And although, as I said, from those 2 sets of tyres, you'll really only get 2 laps at their very best, you can mix the tyres. You can come in after you've used your 2 sets and pick the best of the 8 tyres and go out again on those very highly scrubbed tyres that will result, and try to go for it again. And pole position has been won under those circumstances. Mansell. Of him this year on his travels is over here watching her husband, 2 children, Chloe, his daughter, Leo, his son. I think in the Isle of Man. So Nigel, Dirty sits with Piquet, Mansell building up his speed. Circuit. That is to minimise the air disturbance underneath the car. And they have the most colossal G-forces on them. There is Ayrton Senna's Lotus being readied. V6 Renault engine. That engine has been modified in an effort to provide Senna and his other Renault-using colleagues eventually, although Senna has got the engine exclusively at the moment, with both more power and better fuel consumption. And there is a special qualifying engine as well. And when I tell you that firms are prepared to screw up the turbo boost on the qualifying engine and risk breaking it to get pole position, and that if they break it, that will cost them £60,000, because that's what a top Grand Prix engine costs. You can imagine how important the pole position on the starting grid is. Nigel Mansell exiting clearways, and he's got a clear track when he's got an arrows in front of him, just exiting the pit lane, but it's not getting in Nigel Mansell's way as he goes round the right-hander. And now he is going for Nelson Piquet's pole position. Nigel Mansell, who is in 2nd place on the grid. We face the prospect of Williams cars in 1st and 2nd places on the grid at the present moment. And he's going slow now, of course, because he's just building up. He's getting his tyres organised, warmed up. Nelson Piquet's pole position, 1 minute 7.063, as the world champion Alain Prost in his McLaren gets ready to go out. Prost at the present moment is in 6th position on the grid, and he was about 2 seconds off Piquet's pole position time yesterday. Not entirely happy with the McLaren, because now, after 2 years of being Constructors' Champion, World Champion, John Barnard's magnificent McLaren design has finally met its equal in the Williams Honda. Nigel Mansell out on the track, Alain Prost 6th on the grid, getting ready to go out, and Michele Alboreto has got the problem of a fire, which will be a turbo fire, and contrast the efficiency of the marshalling and the firefighters here at Brands Hatch with the catastrophic shambles in the French Grand Prix last weekend, when Philippe Streff's car was allowed to burn merrily away, when the fire tender came out, when the hose blew off the back of the tank, and a disgusted Michele Alboreto, who, to a lot of people's surprise, has re-signed for Ferrari for 1987, walks away from the car that he will not be competing in any further this afternoon. Because in order to put the fire out, they've had to well douse it in fire foam, and the car will have to be cleaned off. But there's a spare waiting for him when he gets back to the pits, and Nigel Mansell is going to arrive there a lot faster than Alboreto does, and he nearly slides off there in masterly recovery. And he has gone off now, you see. I think Mansell there was unsighted and thrown out of his rhythm by the Zach speed there of Jonathan Palmer in front of him. And he's coming to the pits very sensibly, because he went over the concrete rumble bars and he may well have damaged the under tray of the car. Well, that may well have destroyed Nigel Mansell's chance of getting pole position. He's obviously not at all happy, you can see by the way he's sitting in the car. Well, of course his mechanics don't know why he's come in until he gets out of the car. Detachable steering wheel, the car isn't coming to pieces, and Nigel's giving him a tap, telling him what's happened. The car will be pulled back into the pits. Now there are 3 Honda-powered Williams cars here. The interesting thing is that because Nelson Piquet is the #1 driver, he has the prior right. There's the grass being pulled away from the front wing. Let's have a look and see what happened as Nigel Mansell was coming up to the 2 drivers and their cars in front of him who were getting ready. You see Kemp's out of the left-hander there at Sterling's. He's unsighted by Jonathan Palmer's Zach speed. Goes over that very high concrete rumble bar section, over the grass, and has definitely disturbed the under tray and may even have affected the suspension of the car. Alain Prost leaving the pit lane, going for an improvement on his 6th position. This 60-minute practice session is now 23, nearly 24 minutes old, with Nelson Piquet in pole position, Mansell 2nd, Berger 3rd with yesterday's time, Senna 4th with yesterday's time. Farby has moved up to 5th place with today's time. Keke Rosberg is in 6th position. And here is the man, Ayrton Senna. In many ways the fastest driver in Grand Prix racing these days. When I tell you that Ayrton Senna has driven in 36 Grand Prix in his short Grand Prix career, and that in 12 of them he started from pole position, which even my mathematics tells me is 1/3, which is 33.3%. That is quite an incredible achievement. This he's the 2nd youngest driver racing in Grand Prix these days. Was the youngest until Alain Berg joined the scene from Canada in the Canadian Grand Prix to drive for Osella. Berg had a big spin-off this morning in the non-qualifying practice. Senna settling himself into his helmet. The mechanics have to tighten up the shoulder straps and the lap straps because the driver can't get them tight enough. Senna is just adjusting them on his shoulders. And there are crutch straps, thigh straps, waist straps, and the only thing that you can move when you're belted into the car are your legs, your arms and your head. The rest of you is absolutely immobile. And it needs to be, because the G-forces that operate on you are absolutely enormous. And if you weren't belted in, you'd be thrown about all over the car and would lose control. No wheels, you see, or tyres, because the tyres and wheels are still inside their heating blankets, waiting to be put on at the very last moment. The tyres will be qualifying tyres. The tyre manufacturers make 3 grades, or Goodyear do, which are the tyres that are being put on now. And you can see the heating blankets as Clive Hicks there puts them on. Those heating blankets will come off. The wheel nuts are being torqued up. That enormous spanner has got a load presetting on it so that the wheel nut is done up at the right tension and no more. The blanket's still on. The very last moment they'll come off. Prost is away. We've still got no change as the world champion is down to 7th position on the grid now. And it's notable that the 2 Benetton BMWs are in great shape for tomorrow's British Grand Prix, because as a result of Theo Fabi improving dramatically on yesterday's 13th place to this afternoon's current 5th place, it means to say that both of them are in the top 5 in the starting grid for tomorrow's race at the moment. But there are still 33 minutes of practice to go, and the order is Piquet in pole position with a time faster than last year's European Grand Prix pole position set up by Ayrton Senna, who is just leaving the pits to go out with those heated wheels and tyres. But Prost is really getting ready to have a go for it. Now, his fastest lap yesterday and his fastest so far, 69.779 seconds into the right-hander and Cannon. Very bumpy on the outskirts, drops downhill. I remind you that the first lap when they go out is always a slow lap. Don't expect fireworks, literal or metaphorical, on the first lap, because they're just setting up the car, making sure that all is well. He passes Ayrton Senna there, who's similarly on his slow build-up lap. And 31-year-old Alain Prost, who won the British Grand Prix in 1981 and 1985, will be going for his quick one on the next lap. Well, there you see the work on Nigel Mansell's car. Difficult to know what they're doing. A lot of activity. Alan Chalice on the left with his back to us, one of the most experienced mechanics in Grand Prix racing, goes right back to the BRM, the original BRM days. Nelson Piquet is on the circuit as well as we watch Ayrton Senna, who is only in 4th position. I say only because that is an unusually low position for the brilliant Brazilian. Williams Honda with Goodyear tyres leads for tomorrow's grid at the moment, and we are roughly halfway through the session. Williams Honda second with Mansell, Benetton BMW with Berger, Lotus Renault with Senna 4th. And this is where they and we are at, this magnificent, historic, demanding circuit at Brands Hatch, with its twists and its turns and its descents and its ascents. We look down from the Goodyear airship, and now we look at the Goodyear airship, giving us a unique view of Brands. Weather conditions still just about ideal. The track is faster than it was yesterday. There's no sun shining to make things too hot or to create dazzle or any of the other little problems. The track surface is at a nice temperature. There's been plenty of rubber laid down as a result of yesterday's and today's practice, and the rubber on the circuit at Brands makes it faster. We've already had Ayrton Senna there's European Grand Prix pole position from last year, time beaten by Piquet, and Senna goes for it. Had it been a Grand racing phenomenon. His target is Nelson Piquet's time of 1 minute 7.063. 1 minute 7.063. And Ayrton Senna has achieved, as I said earlier on, 12 pole positions in a very short Grand Prix career, which started in 1984 with the then Tolman team, from which he departed in controversial circumstances to join Lotus in 1985, and my goodness, he's trying. The most intense man in Grand Prix racing is just going to avoid being balked by the car in front of him, and Senna, with an old head on his young shoulders, has an incredible gift of finding a clear lap. He's done it. 1 minute 7.55 according to my timing, and the official time is 1 minute 7.524, which means to say that he has not, I repeat, not beaten Piquet's pole position time of 1 minute 7.063. 1 minute 7.524, in fact, does not beat Mansell's time. And now Senna has been out twice, so he certainly either used both his sets of qualifying tires once or one set twice. It's difficult without having somebody at every pit to know what the exact circumstances are, but he's going to be facing problems from now on. Well, there is the Lotus pit, and I should point out, incidentally, that Ayrton Senna is not the only chap that drives for Lotus. Johnny Dumfries drives for Lotus, and for the first time, this truly gifted Scotsman is driving at a Grand Prix circuit that he knows well from past experience, and it showed up superbly. He was 7th fastest in the non-qualifying 1.5 hours practice this morning. At one time yesterday, in the qualifying session, he was 5th, and he's finished up in 8th position on the grid. I'm expecting great things in future from Johnny Dumfries, and they could well start happening today and be continued tomorrow. There is the Lotus of Johnny Dumfries with his distinctive dark blue and cream helmet with the Scottish cross on the front of it and all around it. Extremely lively, friendly, good-humoured temperament. 28 years old, lives in Fakenham, and tomorrow will be his 8th Grand Prix. The Formula 3 and second in the European Championship in that category in 1984. And he created a bit of a sensation by last year being signed by Ferrari as their official tester. Not that he got very much experience, because he had very few drives, but it was nevertheless a signal honour for him. He drove in a few Formula 3000 races last year, but with very little success, through no fault of his own. And then he got this plum drive with Lotus as a result of Senna's obdurate refusal to accept Derek Warwick in the Lotus team, and Johnny Dumfries has grasped that opportunity with both hands. Senna in. And now what they do, you see the mechanics crouch around the wheels. What they are doing is taking tyre temperatures and pressures. And you can see exactly the pressure they operate at, just over 1 atmosphere. And there's the man I'm always talking about, Kenny Szymanski, who is actually a full-time airline steward, and somehow finds time to fit the Grand Prix in between flights to do this job for Lotus. There's Steve Hallam with his back to us. There's Steve in the yellow cap, who is Ayrton Senna's race engineer. And they take the temperatures across the 3 points in the tyre, the right side, the centre and the left. There's the Goodyear technician with his heat probe, And the idea of that is to get the temperature even across the tread of the tyre by adjusting the suspension, which means to say that the maximum amount of rubber will then be on the ground and therefore provide the maximum amount of grip to transmit the 1,000 plus horsepower from the Renault V6 engine. That green button, by the way, on Ayrton Senna's steering wheel provides him with extra boost from the turbocharger. There it is. And Senna punches that button usually during the first lap to give him extra power, but in doing so, of course, it's placing extra stress on the engine, and even more importantly these days, of a mandatory 195 litres maximum allowance of fuel, increasing fuel consumption. So you can't use that too much, but at critical moments like the first lap, and if you want to pass someone, you can give it a touch of extra boost to increase the power over a short term, and when the problems overcome, you let the button go. Mansell, helmet off, balaclava helmet off. It's a hot job, this, because they wear very heavy fireproof underwear and socks, on top of which they wear those very heavy 3-layer Nomex fireproof overalls, balaclava helmet of the same material, special shoes, special fireproof gloves, and over the whole lot goes the crash helmet. The incredible Nelson Piquet has, while I've been talking about Mansell, been out and has improved his time to something that's going to be very, very difficult to beat. There it is, 1 minute 6.961. Nelson Piquet in effect saying, in the nicest possible way, I am still the greatest. And there he is. 33 years old, Nelson Piquet, fourth last year. Here is Ayrton Senna, out of the car that you saw him in earlier on. He has 2 cars at his disposal and preferential rights to them in comparison with Johnny Dumfries, because Senna is the signed #1 driver, and very much so. There's Mansell's car. You see, that little cross-country rally-cross trip of Nigel's over the grass by way of the concrete rumble bars has not done the car very much good. And the reason they're not slotting him into the other one is because, as Nelson Piquet is #1 driver, notwithstanding the fact that Nigel Mansell has won 3 times as many Grand Prix as Piquet has this year, Piquet has the rights to that car if he wants to use it, and in any case, to adjust Piquet's car to Mansell's settings in terms of the pedals, the clutch, the brake and the accelerator pedal, changing the seat, changing the windscreen. There's a tiny little vestigial windscreen on these Williams cars in front of the driver. Piquet has one that can hardly be seen, and Nigel Mansell's is bigger. Now there is Piquet's windscreen. You may say that's hardly a windscreen, but nevertheless aerodynamically it's just the right shape to lift the buffeting over. Sorry, that's Mansell's windscreen, I apologise. The Piquet's is even smaller than that. Mansell's is about a third to 50% bigger than Piquet's. And to make all these changes, change the windscreen, change the pedals, change the seat, takes a long time. There's Senna, second car, 60-minute session, 40 minutes has been completed, 2/3 of the second, final, vital qualifying session for tomorrow's British Grand Prix. 75 laps, 195.75 miles have been completed. Magnificent cut glass bowl I have never seen in my life, individually crafted for the winner of this race, very similar in design and execution to the one that Nigel Mansell won at the European Grand Prix last year, and which currently graces his dining table in his Corderin home. And a very impressive sight it is. Piquet. 7 years with Brabham. A lot of people forget that Piquet also drove for a short time for McLaren, not in a works McLaren, but in a privately owned one of the BS Automotive cars. And then before that he drove in Mo Nunn's inside team. Ex-kart racer, came over to Britain, competed in and won the BP Formula 3 British Championship of 1978. And he makes a great team with Frank Durney on the left. A couple of Ayrton Senna supporters. If they turn round, actually, they've got completely different words on their back because, thank you very much. There we are, Johnny Dumfries. I noticed that this morning walking down the pit lane. Bit of useless information for you. and I was looking at the sweaters. There is Brands Hatch. Unique shape. And tomorrow's British Grand Prix is said to be the last that will be held at Brands Hatch, because as a result of a policy decision to confine the Grand Prix in any one country to one circuit, a contract has been signed for Silverstone to have the British Grand Prix for the next 5 years. And without wishing to enter into the controversy or the politics of the situation, I for one would say it would be a tragedy if no further Grand Prix were held at this magnificent historic Kent circuit. But everybody is keeping their fingers crossed and hoping that Brands will continue to have a Grand Prix life by having events such as a European Grand Prix, for which there is always room in the Grand Prix calendar. Italy has 2 Grand Prix in the form of the Italian Grand Prix and the San Marino event, which officially is not Italian but actually is. France, if you count Monaco as being close to France, has 2. And here is Frenchman Jacques Lafitte, the oldest man in tomorrow's race, who tomorrow will be driving in his 176th Grand Prix to equal the all-time record of the late and great Graham Hill. And in Germany, Jacques Lafitte will become the most experienced Grand Prix driver of all time. And his age has not diminished his speed, because already this year he's had a 2nd place in Detroit and a 3rd place in Brazil. He's been in the points 3 other times. He's 6th in the World Championship at the present moment, and he could well do well here tomorrow, because he drove absolutely superbly in the European Grand Prix at this circuit last October. Now he's on his quick one. And Jacques Lafitte at the present moment needs to improve, because he's only in 19th position on the grid, having had a truly terrible day yesterday. First of all, his car caught fire and was virtually burnt out. Then he got into the other one in the qualifying session yesterday to go for his time, and quite literally, inadvertently drove into the side of Keke Rosberg's McLaren as they went into Druids Hill Bend, and deranged the suspension of the Ligier. Result, a lot of very hard work for the French mechanics. That's Alain Prost, incidentally. And Jacques Lafitte is now going for a good grid time as we watch world champion Alain Prost. An unusual aspect of Prost's car, the McLaren there, with its tag Porsche designed and built engine, is that this engine won't take increased qualifying boost to the same extent as some of the other engines, notably the BMW, Honda and Renault motors, as a result of which the McLarens usually do not show as well in the qualifying sessions as they do in the race. Indeed, it is not until the last half hour of practicing tomorrow morning that we're going to really know how the cars are going to compare, because in that final half hour They go out with full fuel tanks, normal race tyres, normal race boost, and then you very often find that Prost and Rosberg are in the top 2 positions that day, but not on the grid. Jacques Lafitte's come into the pits. Don't know what was worrying, because he looked to me to be going pretty well. All French team. And the sensation here at Brands, of course, is that the Ligier team have signed to use Alfa Romeo engines next year.
Mansell's just going...
Which to many people seems a strange policy, because there's only 2 years left of the existing engine formula and requirements. But with BMW having pulled out of Grand Prix racing as from the end of this season, there is a mad scramble amongst the teams, and there's a sort of musical engines contest going on with all sorts of rumoured changes for next year. Prost, we look down as he takes the left-hander at Surtees. Now he's on the straightest and longest part of the circuit in a straight line. The bit from Surtees to Hawthorne Bend. Prost trying to improve on his yesterday's time of 1 minute 9.779, which currently has him in 8th position. Piquet pole, Mansell 2nd, Senna 3rd, Berger 4th, Rosberg 5th, Farby 6th, Arnoux 7th. Prost is in 8th position, Derek Warwick is in 9th position, Johnny Dumfries is 10th, and Brundle is 11th. So the 3 British drivers, 9th, 10th and 11th. Boutsen is 12th, Jones is 13th. And Prost goes into the pits. I also haven't told you that another sensation of yesterday's practice, and today's for that matter, is that Riccardo Patrese, the Italian in the Brabham team, who is just going out of the pits now. Riccardo Patrese, car number 7, there he is. Those of you who know your Grand Prix cars will observe that he is driving the 1985 BT54 Brabham, the car which we all thought had been put to one side when the new, innovative and dramatically different Brabham BT55, the low-line car with its sideways lying BMW engine, was introduced. And I think it would be a slight exaggeration to say that that car has been a resounding success this year. It is very innovative, but it has clearly got all sorts of teething problems. And Brabham have made a policy decision to try to get points, even by suffering the indignity of having to bring out last year's car. And that is the car that Riccardo Patrese is going to drive in tomorrow's British Grand Prix. And Derek Warwick, who's joined Brabham recently as Michele Alboreto scorches round in the Ferrari, is going to drive the BT55 tomorrow. And they are very much persevering with getting it right. Ferrari have made changes to their car. They've tried to improve the handling, having got the engine power right, by modifying the front suspension. Michele Alboreto is way down on the grid at the present moment in only 16th place. We seem to have got Nigel Mansell's car au point. Nigel's going out and Senna is going out. And it is from now on that things really start to get dramatic, because we're into the last 10 minutes of this practice session. Arnoux is going out. You just saw Arnoux driving out. There is the Benetton of Theo Fabi, the laid-back Italian. Now the Zach Speed of Dutchman Hube Rotagatta. Following him out, Nigel Mansell, and Ayrton Senna is getting ready to do battle again. Pole position at the moment, with Alain Prost waiting to go out too, is still Nelson Piquet with a seemingly unbeatable 1 minute 6.961. And having said that, I suppose about half a dozen people will go out and go faster. Car built in Didcot, Berkshire. minutes to go. Jonathan Palmer, who I haven't mentioned, at the Zach speed, is in 21st position, which is about where he expected to be. The underfunded Zach speed team is doing a marvellous job, but suffers from less power from their engines, and they're only in their second season of Grand Prix racing. And it's Piquet pole, Mansell second, Senna third, Berger fourth, Rosberg fifth, Barbie sixth, Arnoux seventh, Prost eighth, Warwick ninth, Dumfries 10th, Brundle 11th, Boutsen 12th, Jones 13th, Tombe 14th, Johansson and Alboreto, the two Ferraris, 15th and 16th. Philippe Streff is 17th, Patrese in the old Brabham 18th, Jacques Lafitte is still down in 19th position, Nannini is 20th, Palmer is 21st, then it is 22nd Dana, 23rd in Cesaris, 24th Ginzani, 25th Rotagatta, and Alan Berg, who spun this morning, is still on yesterday's time in 26th and last place. Trying to improve on his 1 minute 7.399 seconds second position lap by at least 0.4 of a second in order to take pole from his teammate Nelson Piquet, who is shortly leaving the pits. Nelson Piquet, that is. Mansell out of Westfield into Dingle corner, up to Stirling's bend, the left-hander. You notice the way they go right to the left and then drift out to the right. That's where he went off. So he'll be keeping a weather eye out when he goes round there next time. And here he goes. This could be it. Mansell out of clearways and over the line now. Paddock bend. 175 miles an hour, up Druids Hill, into Druids Hill bend, down Brown Hill bend. Watch the way he is inch perfect on the turns, minimising the amount of slippage, because you lose time if you don't keep on the line. Watch the spark striking from the under tray of his car from those skid plates. The vortices from the rear wings. The right-hander at Hawthorne there. He passes a slow man there. No problem. No time left. There's someone coming in front of him. Let's hope he doesn't get in the way. And everybody in the Williams pit is watching Nigel Mansell's progress, as are we. And here he goes. Past his teammate Nelson Piquet. I don't think he's going to do it on this lap. He's coming up behind one of the Minardis, and according to my stopwatch, it's 1 minute 7.91, which is definitely too slow, but officially it's 1 minute 7.878, and Nigel Mansell is still therefore second on the grid, with Nelson Piquet in pole position, Senna third, Berger fourth, Rosberg fifth, and Prost sixth. There's the confirmation. The first 10, including British drivers Nigel Mansell in second position, Derek Warwick in a notable and praiseworthy 9th position in the Brabham, and in 10th position Johnny Dumfries. But
the former world champion Nelson Piquet of Brazil will be in pole position in his Williams car for the start of tomorrow's British Grand Prix, and the man tipped by many to be the next world champion, hopefully his British teammate Nigel Mansell, will be alongside him in second place. A report now from Murray Walker.
super prospects for tomorrow's British Grand Prix, because the gang of 5 are all in the top 6 on the starting grid. It's an all-Williams front row, with Nelson Piquet in pole position and his teammate Nigel Mansell just a whisker behind him. Wonderful encouragement for Frank Williams, who's been here in his wheelchair to see his cars take those top 2 places. In 3rd position, Ayrton Senna in the Lotus, and in 4th place, Gerhard Berger in the Benetton BMW. 5th and 6th, the 2 McLaren drivers, Keke Rosberg and world champion Alain Prost, who really have to go tomorrow, and that applies to both of them. There's going to be an absolutely terrific crowd here at Brands Hatch. There's been a record for practice day today, so my advice to you is come to see the British Grand Prix, but make sure you start early, and if you can't get here, don't forget it's on Sunday grandstand, and it's really going to be worth seeing.
Brands Hatch.